Hey everybody, today we're going to do something a little different, and it's actually something that a lot of you have asked me for, to see my movie collection. I talk about I'm new to the YouTube space. I never actually thought this would be something that people would be interested in, but I've gotten a lot of requests for it, and I've seen a lot of my fellow film critics like Chris Stuckman and the Flick Pick doing their collections, and people seem to really enjoy that, so why not? A couple of disclaimers. First of all, this is actually the second time today I've done this video. Pro tip, don't do a really long video as you're trying out a new microphone setup because it didn't quite work. So we changed location, changed microphones, so I'm going to do this again, but the one thing I did learn is I got to go through these a little quicker, but also this video is going to be pretty long because I've been collecting movies really for my entire life, but this is really the sum total of DVD collecting, Blu-ray collecting. I'm getting into 4K a little bit as well for quite some time. So strap in because we're gonna go literally A to Z through my entire collection, and it's a bunch of movies. So I'm gonna try to fly through it as quick as I can, but I may stop here and there and just comment a little bit. And I want to say a few words about every movie. I have my wonderful producing partner Mara. She will be helping me with handoff. That's her right there. And this is our combined collection. So there's a few movies that I haven't seen or that I may want to ask her about. So she might pop in and say hello from time to time. So without further ado, this is going to be a long one. Strap yourself in. Let's go through my movie collection. And we'll start with the first movie, which is 10 Cloverfield Lane. This actually holds a lot of emotional significance because this is the first movie that Mara and I saw in a theater together. So I like that this is the first movie I'm showing you. Then we have 12 Angry Men. This is a classic, all-time great movie, Sidney Lumet. If you haven't seen this movie, it needs to go on your must-see list if you're a movie fan. This is a fantastic movie. Then we've got 21 Jump Street and 22 Jump Street, two great modern comedies. Jonah Hill, Channing Tatum, what's not to love? And then two more movies that go together. We've got 28 Days Later with this weird Best Buy artwork, 28 Weeks Later also. There's a lot of these. These are a couple that I bought because I'm a bargain bin addict, basically. So there's a bunch of movies I have because I found they were there for cheap and I had a good deal on them. But those are two good movies that I got for cheap, but also are really good. Then we've got Zack Snyder's 300, starring Gerard Butler. You're going to see Gerard Butler a lot, and we're going to talk about the different kinds of Gerard Butler movies, good, bad, and right in the middle. Then we've got 500 Days of Summer. I'm pretty sure this was on sale. It's okay. I like this movie less than I did when I first saw it, but still don't mind having it in the collection. My favorite movie from last year, 1917. This is one of the ones that I got the 4K. Roger Deakins cinematography. Come on, I had to go with the upgrade, and I also like to keep the little cardboard cases. I like to keep the stickers on as well. So I'm kind of weird about that. I like the packaging. I like to keep the original packaging. 2001: A Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick's classic. It's a classic in just about every genre. About a Boy, starring Hugh Grant. If you haven't seen this one, this is little baby Nicholas Hoult here, and also Toni Collette, criminally still robbed of an Oscar many years before she'd be robbed of an Oscar. Great in this movie too. If you haven't seen About a Boy, that's a great one. About Schmidt with Jack Nicholson. He's fantastic in this film. That's an Alexander Payne movie. I have a couple of those. Ace in the Hole. This is my first Criterion edition. This is a wonderful Billy Wilder movie with Kirk Douglas, who just passed away not too long ago. I've talked about this movie before. This is an underrated classic movie, a great movie, and it's about the media, so it's pretty relevant to today. Adaptation, Chris Cooper won an Oscar for this role. Spike Jonze, Charlie Kaufman script, Nicolas Cage pulling double duty. Then The Addams Family, a true classic of my childhood. AI, artificial intelligence. A lot of split thoughts on this movie, including for myself, but it looks incredible, a gorgeous looking movie. Then we've got Air Force One, part of the mid to late 90s action renaissance. Get off my plane, Harrison Ford. Speaking of planes, Airplane, one of the best comedies ever made. Airplane 2, the sequel, not one of the best comedies ever made, but I think that it's got its moments. It's largely a rehash of the first one, but there's a couple things I like that are in there. Then we've got Aladdin, the animated Aladdin. I liked the live action, but I don't. If it's for $5, I might grab it. But that one I love. Then we've got this set of Alfred Hitchcock movies. I don't know exactly where this came from or when I got it, but it's got Rear Window, Vertigo, North by Northwest, Psycho, and The Birds. If you're looking to get into Alfred Hitchcock, I can't think of a better starter set than this. So if you can find this set for a good price, I highly recommend that. Then we have two movies in the same franchise. We have Alien, one of the best sci-fi horror movies ever made from Ridley Scott, and of course we have Aliens, there we go, Aliens from James Cameron, one of the best sci-fi action movies ever made. Those are the only two of the Alien films that I have, though. Then All About Eve, one of the best movies ever made. Bette Davis, she gave a lot of great performances, but this is probably her best one. All the President's Men with Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford about Woodward and Bernstein and Watergate. Maybe the best journalism movie ever made. Then I've got Almost Famous, the bootleg cut. Cameron Crowe did this as a director's cut to Almost Famous, and it's one of the director's cuts that I like as much or more than the original movie. If you've seen Almost Famous and you haven't seen this cut of the movie, I recommend it. Or if you haven't seen Almost Famous, just watch any cut of Almost Famous. Then the director's cut of Amadeus, a Best Picture winner, a great movie. This is one, Criterion runs these flash sales a few times a year, so I always like to pick up the box sets when they're half off. This is one called America Lost and Found, the BBS story. BBS was a production company that was a big player in the sort of new wave of American movies. You can read a lot about them in the book Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, which I highly recommend. This is one that has a lot of those movies collected in one place. You've got Head, which stars the Monkees and was directed by Jack Nicholson. That's a nuts movie. This also has Easy Rider, Five Easy Pieces, Drive, he said, A Safe Place, The Last Picture Show, and The King of Marvin Gardens. This is a great primer for the late 60s to 70s revolution in cinema. Then American Beauty, a Best Picture winner, a Best Actor winner. I think that Annette Bening should have won Best Actress for this movie as well. An American Tail, the first movie I ever remember seeing. Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy. I like this movie. It's the unrated version. I think I kind of prefer the theatrical version. I think it might be on this disc. I'm not sure. Another classic film, Animal House. I like that this is one of the Blu-rays that kept the original artwork. A lot of them don't. I like the original artwork and poster stuff. Then Annihilation, one of the best science fiction films to come out in quite some time. Ant-Man, first MCU film. I think I like this movie a little bit more than a lot of people do with the MCU films. And Ant-Man and the Wasp, this is one of the ones that I have in 4K. I like these lenticular covers, or lenticular, that's right. Isn't it lenticular? Anyway, I think I like Ant-Man and the Wasp a little less than a lot of people do with the MCU. Then we have The Apartment. It's funny that the front of the movie's in color because it's a movie in black and white. This is one of Billy Wilder's best movies. It's one of my favorite movies. Shirley MacLaine and Jack Lemmon, Fred MacMurray, everybody's great in this movie. Then we've got a selection of different Apocalypse Nows. This one has the Apocalypse Now and the Redux or Redo or whatever version that they put out that has extra footage. I think they're both interesting films. I think probably the theatrical version is going to work fine. And then this one actually has those two movies, but it also has Hearts of Darkness, which is about the making of Apocalypse Now, which if you want to see someone just descend into madness while making a film, it's one of the great movies about making movies. Then a couple space films. We have Apollo 11, one of my favorite movies from last year, and my favorite documentary, wasn't nominated at the Oscars. And its sequel, I skipped Apollo 12 and went right to Apollo 13. I love that movie. It's a great space film. Everyone's great in that. The late, great Bill Paxton. Then another space film, but a little bit different, Arrival from Denis Villeneuve. As good as it gets. Jack Nicholson won his last acting Oscar, unless he bags another one. For this film, Helen Hunt won for Best Actress as well from James L. Brooks. Then we've got The A-Team. This one is not mine, and I haven't seen the movie, but Mara tells me it's fun.
It's fun.
It's fun, Mara says. Austin Powers triple feature. Good, and has its moments. Then we get into the Avengers. So we've got Avengers, the first film. We've got Avengers, Age of Ultron. We've got Avengers, Infinity War on 4K and Avengers Endgame on 4K. I've been told that this looks great. I actually haven't watched it in 4K yet. When we get to the franchise movies, you'll notice I don't go in alphabetical order. I go in release order because the Avengers movies, they're all together. So I just prefer to keep them. It's weird to put Endgame before Infinity War. Then The Aviator, one of my favorite DiCaprio performances, his team up with Martin Scorsese. It's still about Howard Hughes. The Babadook, this is one of the best modern horror films from Jennifer Kent. It's from Jennifer Kent. It's one of the best modern horror films, period. If you haven't seen The Babadook, check it out. One of my famous directors, Edgar Wright with Baby Driver. The editing, particularly in this movie, I think is fantastic. This is the 25th anniversary edition of Back to the Future. I think that there's so many versions of different movies. This is the one with all three films that came out in 25 years. I'm guessing in like 2000. 2010. I think I'm doing my math right. Is that right? 2010. Then
You're not good at math.
I'm not. I'm very bad at maths. Then we have Backdraft, which is a movie I actually didn't see till fairly recently. But again, I'm a bargain bin hunter, and it was cheap, and I liked it. Then we've got another couple of movies that were on sale together: Bad Boys and Bad Boys 2. I like Bad Boys. I can't. This is like a weatherman. I like Bad Boys way more than I like Bad Boys 2. I think most people go the other way. I think Bad Boys is the better film. Then we've got Bad Times at the El Royale from Drew Goddard, one of my a really great underrated film. Cynthia Erivo in particular is great in this movie. This is one that I had on DVD forever and could not upgrade, and finally found. This is called Bandits, and it stars Cate Blanchett and Billy Bob Thornton and Bruce Willis. It's a Barry Levinson movie. I think it's a funny film. Billy Bob Thornton in particular is really funny in this movie. If you haven't seen Bandits, if you can find it, I would recommend it. Barry Lyndon from Stanley Kubrick. This is the Criterion edition. I didn't see that movie till recently, but I love it. Now we're getting into the Batman, if you will. So we've got Batman, the 1966 movie starring Adam West. Then I've got Batman 1989 as a standalone edition. I think I just liked this packaging. It's got I don't even know. It doesn't have a name. It's got a little booklet inside. I have a few of these that are like this. They made these for a while, just these sort of special packaging things. Then we've got the Batman 4-pack, Batman Returns, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin. I have watched 3 of these. You can guess which 3. Batman Begins, Nolan, obviously. Then we've got the DC, the animated universe. So Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, the adaptation of the Frank Miller comic. I actually like that quite a bit. Another animated film, Batman: The Mask of the Phantasm. I love that they kept this original artwork. That's the movie from the 1993 animated series. Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This was on sale right around Christmas. I have not seen this yet, but I've heard it's good. So I like all those. Are like my 2 favorite things. My 6-year-old self would have just shit himself if he'd known about that. Then we've got Batman Under the Red Hood, another animated film, and Batman Year One, another animated film. I'm a big Batman guy. Lots of Batman here in the house. Then Beauty and the Beast, the original animated film. This is the only one that I own and plan to own. I love this movie. Wasn't a huge fan of the live action remake. A Beautiful Mind, a Best Picture winner. Got Ron Howard a Best Director Oscar. Before the Devil Knows You're Dead. This is Sidney Lumet's last film and one of his best, along with a fantastic performance from Philip Seymour Hoffman. If you haven't seen that movie, it's great. And then this is a Criterion edition of the Before trilogy from Richard Linklater. Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, Before Midnight. 3 great movies. It's kind of similar to what he did in Boyhood in the sense of tracking the same people over a long period of time. Then we've got the Criterion edition of Being John Malkovich, which I think is one of the most brilliant films made in the last 20, 30 years. The Belko Experiment. Mara and I actually went to see this on Valentine's Day.
When?
On February 14th, and she loved it. I was very mixed on it, but we got it because she likes it. It's our collection. Beverly Hills Cop, which is I didn't see until recently, but I enjoyed. There's a reason that is regarded as a comedy classic. Big, another comedy classic. I love this movie. I think it's a great movie. We have a lot of bigs coming up. Then we've got The Big Lebowski. This movie is actually picked as one of the movies for Dan's Movie Club this month over on Patreon. If you're interested in that, it's about movies that I appreciated more after I watched them the second time. The Big Short, which was Adam McKay's film, a multiple Oscar nominee. The Big Sick, which was an Oscar nominee for writing. And then Hello, Joe Starr. Big Trouble in Little China. This is one of the Best Buy ones. It's got the disc itself has got that kind of artwork, but Best Buy repackages a lot of these for cheap that have this kind of custom artwork. So I have a few of these. This is one of them. So Big Trouble in Little China. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. I actually had Excellent Adventure stand alone, but I had a hard time finding Bogus Journey. Weatherman, can't do it. So I actually have them both now combined. I love that this movie's on Blu-ray because it should really only exist on VHS. Birdemic, Shock and Terror. Truly one of the worst movies ever made, but one of the best times you'll ever have watching a movie. Spike Lee's Black Klansman. It's one of Spike Lee's best films. He won an Oscar for this movie. It's also a fantastic movie. John David Washington. Not much bad to say about this movie. Then I've got Black Panther on 4K Ultra HD with the MCU. Black Swan got Natalie Portman a Best Actress Oscar from Darren Aronofsky. Then I've got Blade Runner: The Final Cut on 4K. I forget which cut this is. There are about 8 cuts of Blade Runner, and I can't keep them straight, but this is the one Ridley Scott says is the final cut. But I actually like Blade Runner 2049 better than all the cuts of the original Blade Runner. I prefer the sequel. It's just me. A lot of people think I'm crazy. That's fine. That's on 4K as well. Then the Blair Witch Project. I think if you were alive in 1999 and over the age of 13, they just sent you this movie in the mail. I think you just somehow own it. I don't know how it works. Blazing Saddles, one of the best comedies ever made the same year as another movie we're going to hit at the end of the alphabet. Blind Spotting. This is such... Just watch this movie, especially right now. This is such an emotional movie. It really changed my thoughts and my perspectives on so much. It is an eye-opening film. I have only grown to appreciate this film more over time. If you have not seen Blind Spotting, it is a fantastic movie. Blue Velvet, directed by David Lynch. I think this is the only David Lynch movie that I own. I'm not a big Lynch guy, but this was on sale and I liked it. I liked this movie a lot. Then we've got The Blues Brothers, great musical. I think it's a musical. Bohemian Rhapsody, another one people might not think is a musical. I got a good price on this, and it's really just for the last 20 minutes. And Rami Malek. There's a lot that's kind of like about this movie, but there's a few things that are fantastic. Bonnie and Clyde. This is a seminal movie in American cinema history. Some say that this kicked off the new wave of American films in the late 60s. If you haven't seen Bonnie and Clyde, this is also a very important movie in the film criticism arena because there was a lot of split conversation about this film. Anyway, if you're looking for a primer on American movies, Bonnie and Clyde is a must-watch in that primer. Then we've got Booksmart, came out last year. I really enjoyed this movie. The Book of Henry. Some would call this the movie that lost Colin Trevorrow Star Wars. I don't know if that's true, but what I can say is that it is for the Naomi Watts sniper mother loving person in your life. This movie is insane. Just crazy. Then we've got the Bourne trilogy, the Bourne Identity, the Bourne Supremacy, the Bourne Ultimatum, 1, 2, 3. I don't have Jason Bourne. I didn't really like it that much. I love those three movies, however. Bowling for Columbine, Michael Moore's Oscar-winning documentary. There have been criticisms that have been leveled at Moore's process making this, and I've heard those criticisms, but I also think that it is a very powerful piece of filmmaking. Boyhood, the Criterion edition of this. Again, Richard Linklater. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite movies of the previous decade. Another film that was made in the 90s but is as relevant today as it was then, Boys in the Hood, from the late John Singleton. Everybody in this movie is great. Ice Cube in particular is fantastic in this movie, and just a great piece of filmmaking. Braveheart, obviously Oscar winner for Best Picture, Freedom, all that stuff. Then we've got The Breakfast Club, the Criterion edition. This is one of my favorite John Hughes movies, but not my favorite. My favorite is actually coming up later on. Next, we've got The Bridge on the River Kwai, one of the best movies ever made, directed by David Lean. I got this one on 4K because it deserves to be seen in the best... it really deserves to be seen on a big screen. But if you haven't seen Bridge on the River Kwai, it is long, but it is worth it. Then we've got Bullet, one of the best car chases ever made. Plus, look at Steve McQueen. He's just cool. Burn After Reading, great Coen Brothers movie. Not for everybody, but I'm a big fan of it. Then Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, one of the best westerns ever made. The Cabin in the Woods, starring Chris Hemsworth, Drew Goddard, who did Bad Times at the El Royale, a great, both a horror movie and a commentary on the horror genre. Then Caddyshack, one of the great dumb comedies of all time. Ted Knight is underrated in this film. You'll get nothing like it. Ugh. Call Me By Your Name, my favorite movie of the year that it came out. I think this is a beautiful movie, and it gave us Timothée. Timothée Chalamet is wonderful. I know it's not Timothée. I just like to have fun. He's amazing in that movie, though. Then we've got the Captain Americas. We have Captain America, the First Avenger, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Captain America Civil War, the Captain America trilogy. I'm a completist, so if you've seen my reviews, you know I didn't care that much for Captain Marvel. However, I have all the other MCU films, both before and after it, so it just felt weird to not have it, so I have it. But I think Captain Phillips, between those two, is the superior captain. He's the captain now. He wasn't in the movie though. Carrie, this is another one of the weird Best Buy. It's like detachable artwork almost. You can peel this artwork off. They did this with comic books too. I think it's just so that they can sell another edition of it. This isn't my favorite artwork, but it's a really good movie, so I'll live with the artwork. Casablanca, one of the best movies ever made. Stay tuned. You're going to hear a lot more about this movie on this channel very soon. Casino from Martin Scorsese. I actually put this on the same level as Goodfellas, which we'll talk about in a second. Not a lot of people do. Castaway, Tom Hanks is stranded on a desert island. I like that movie. Another Tom Hanks movie, Catch Me If You Can, from Steven Spielberg. Underrated Spielberg movie. People don't talk about this movie when they talk about the best movies he's ever made, but I think that's a great movie. Charlie Wilson's War. Philip Seymour Hoffman is wonderful in this movie. Mike Nichols directed it, I believe. Mike Nichols directed it. And again, a movie that speaks to current times very, very strongly. Chasing Amy, the first Kevin Smith movie, but not the last. I've got a lot of Kevin Smith movies, particularly the ones that came out when I was in high school and college, because they were very influential on me. Cheap Thrills. If you want a great, little tiny grindhouse horror movie, watch Cheap Thrills. Pat Healy, David Koechner, Ethan Embry. It is gross, but not. I don't know. Watch it. I loved this movie. It's a very tiny movie, but it's one that I loved. Chicago, a movie musical, Best Picture winner. I like musicals. You're going to see several musicals here. Then we got Child's Play. This is another Best Buy thing. It's got that artwork. You can peel this off, and there's like other artwork underneath it, but it's okay. This was a bargain. This was a bargain buy for me. Chinatown. Really just look at these two. Faye Dunaway, Jack Nicholson, one of the quintessential films of the 70s, and then one of the quintessential films of my house at Christmas Vacation. We alternate every year on Christmas Eve. We watch this one and Elf, which you'll see, I think, in a little bit. Then Chronicle from.
Home Alone.
Oh yeah, that's true. Mara hadn't seen Home Alone, so we threw in Home Alone. Last year. So we might throw in. I don't know if we're gonna do Home Alone every year though. We'll talk about that when we get to Home Alone. Chronicle with Josh Trank, very dark superhero movie. Michael B. Jordan, Dane DeHaan. Citizen Kane. They issue it to you when you walk into any film program at any college or university. One of the most influential films ever made, if not the most influential film of all time. City Slickers, also one of the most influential films of all time. I don't know if modern cinema would be where it is right now if it weren't for City Slickers. I mentioned Kevin Smith, Clerks. This is a very important film to me. I think that's probably the third different version of Clerks that I've owned. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, one of Steven Spielberg's best movies, his follow-up to Jaws. Cloverfield. Remember when everyone was talking about Cloverfield and people thought it was going to be like a Voltron movie, and people thought they said that there was a lion? I don't know. Viral marketing at its best, and I actually like that movie. Sorry for hitting the microphone there. Clue, one of the best comedies of the 80s. That's a Murderer's Row. Just look at this entire cast. Michael McKean, Christopher Lloyd, Martin Mull, Madeline Kahn, Tim Curry. So many great people in this film. Collateral. I don't like this artwork. I don't like a lot of artwork on Blu-rays. This is a great Michael Mann movie. If you haven't seen Collateral, I highly recommend it. Colossal with Jason Sudeikis and Anne Hathaway. This almost cost me my Schmoedown singles belt because I couldn't remember what country this movie was partially set in. This is a really kind of a small movie, but one that I really enjoyed. Then we've got Commando, perhaps the king of the Schwarzenegger one-liner movies. This is 80s action, really, and I have a few others that would also be essential 80s action movie. This is an essential 90s action movie, Con Air, part of the great Nicolas Cage renaissance. Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, George Clooney's directorial debut. If you haven't seen this movie, I like it a lot. It's about Chuck Barris, the host of The Gong Show / Spy. This was the 5-film Conjuring collection. I like most of these movies. I'd say I like Conjuring. I like Conjuring 2. I actually like Annabelle Creation. I was kind of on Annabelle, and I really don't like The Nun. But it was a good price. I think it was all the Conjuring movies up to that point. So Conjuring collection. Then Creed and Creed 2. Both movies, against all odds, are worthy of the Rocky legacy. Great. I really like both those movies, although Coogler really with the first Creed crushed it. Creepshow, great movie. It's a comic book movie. I love every little segment in this film. Then we've got Crimson Tide, which I actually hadn't seen until somewhat recently. Mara's in the Navy, though, and she kept telling me how great it was, and I agree. Just a great submarine thriller with Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Ang Lee, one of the best movies of the early 2000s. The Dark Knight. This was actually the very first Blu-ray disc that I owned. My uncle bought this for me. Hello. My uncle bought this for me for Christmas. It would have been Christmas in 2008. So this was the beginning of my Blu-ray collection. This was the original edition of The Dark Knight that was released. And then, of course, we've got The Dark Knight Rises, a film that I don't like as much as The Dark Knight. But it's okay. It's fine. Then Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, my favorite of the New Apes trilogy, although I like all the other movies a lot. Criterion edition of Days of Heaven, which is a beautiful Terrence Malick film with Richard Gere. Highly recommend that movie. Criterion edition of Dazed and Confused. I didn't realize I had so many Richard Linklater movies, but I like his filmmaking style. I love this movie. Then we've got Deadpool. Deadpool 2, the super duper cut. The theatrical cut's just fine. The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened, by the late great John Schnepp. What a great, I wish that he was still around to talk about this film, but what a great tribute to everything that he loved and all the hard work that he and Holly also put into this film. I'm very happy to have it in my collection. Deep Blue Sea. I'm a shark movie guy, so you got this one. You got Demolition Man, 90s action. I think that's probably in the must-have pack. Den of Thieves, one of my two most recent additions. We talked about Gerard Butler movies. I put this in the good Gerard Butler movie circle. It's not great, but it's good. I actually enjoyed this. I think it just got on Netflix and people are finding it, but I recommend Den of Thieves. It's a crafty little crime drama. Then The Departed got Marty that Oscar, Scorsese that Oscar. This is one of those movies that I can watch just about any time. And yeah, I have The Devil Wears Prada. This isn't a Blu-ray. This is a cerulean ray. I love this movie. I think it's great. Meryl Streep's awesome in this movie. Then we've got Devil's Advocate, maybe the most over-the-top Al Pacino performance of all time, unless you count Dick Tracy. Dick Tracy was a big part of my childhood. I loved this movie when I was a kid, but another great over-the-top Al Pacino performance. Then I've got the Die Hard 25th anniversary Blu-ray collection, so I guess that would have come out in about 2013. This has the first 4 Die Hard movies in it, but really you're here for Die Hard 1 through 3. 4 is, and I really don't like 5. Disaster Artist, The Making of the Room. You're going to see The Room later on. We've got Django Unchained, the first Quentin Tarantino movie. You're going to see a lot more of these. And then another keystone film, particularly in I guess you could still call it modern filmmaking, although it's becoming more and more of a classic. Do the Right Thing. Obviously still a very relevant film, and stay tuned. You're going to hear a lot more about Do the Right Thing on the channel in the near future. Dodgeball, a true underdog story. The Do the Right Thing of sports-related parody movies. I don't know. It gave us That's a Bold Move, Cotton. If nothing else, that makes it worth it. Then Dog Day Afternoon, a Sidney Lumet movie. One of Al Pacino's, not before he got into the huge performance phase of his career. A great movie, if you haven't seen that. Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. I have not seen it. Mara brought this one. It has Katie Holmes and Guy Pearce, and it's presented by Guillermo del Toro. How is it? Is it good?
I enjoy it.
She enjoys it. All right. I'll have to check out Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. Then we've got Dope, a great teen/crime movie set in the 90s, and it's got Tony Revolori. Who doesn't love Tony Revolori? I love Tony Revolori. Double Indemnity, one of the great film noirs of all time, directed by Billy Wilder, starring Barbara Stanwyck and Fred MacMurray. If you haven't seen this movie, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. Shout, I think, put this out fairly recently. This is the first time Dragnet, the 80s film Dragnet, starring Dan Aykroyd and Tom Hanks, came out. I think it's a dumb 80s comedy. Christopher Plummer plays a great villain in this movie. Then we've got Dredd with Carl Urban, one of the great comic book movies of the last however long. We have Doctor Strange in the MCU, another MCU movie that I think I like more than a lot of folks. Then we have Doctor Strange Love. That'd be kind of a great double feature. One of Kubrick's great films. A lot of people forget that he directed pretty much every genre. This is one of the best comedies of all time, I think, as well as just being a great Kubrick film. Then we've got Dumbo, the Disney animated classic. A lot of conversations going on about Dumbo, which are important conversations that need to be had, but it is still a key film in the animated classics thing, and I think it's like an hour long or less than. It's crazy what feature animation used to be. Then The Edge of 17, a great little movie that came out a few years ago starring Haley Steinfeld. If you haven't seen that, I really like this movie. Okay, I put this under Edge of Tomorrow because that's what the movie was called when I saw it. Now, it has since been rebranded Live, Die, Repeat. The thing says it's both, but it says Live, Die, Repeat first. I'm calling it Edge of Tomorrow because that's the name. That's what the damn movie was called. Why we're changing movies titles now? What's going on? Dogs and cats living together. Election. Alexander Payne and Matthew Broderick, Reese Witherspoon. That's a great movie. That's another Criterion edition that I picked up on their flash sale. Empire Records probably only speaks to people that were alive at a certain age during about a 5-year gap in the 90s. I'm one of those people. Lucas, one of my favorite characters in any movie in the 90s. This is classics. 2 classic films that you must have. These are the best 2. Yeah, I said it. The best 2 Ernest films. Ernest Goes to Camp and Ernest Goes to Jail. I hear you, Ernest Saves Christmas and Ernest Scared Stupid fans. But you're remembering the best parts about these movies. These are the 2 best ones, and so you must have them. Put them right next to Citizen Kane. E.T. the Extraterrestrial, what more can I say? It's a classic. It's one of my favorite films. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, another one of my favorites, the first movie that Mara and I ever watched together, period. But just a brilliant movie. One of my favorite movies of the 21st century. Then we've got Evil Dead 2. Is it a comedy? Is it a horror movie? It doesn't matter. It's great. Ex Machina, Oscar winner for Best Visual Effects, upset Star Wars The Force Awakens, also a great movie from Alex Garland. And The Exorcist. So this has the theatrical version and the director's cut. I say watch the theatrical version. The director's cut is interesting, but it messes with the tempo a little bit. If you have this edition or if you have a chance, I say go with the one that was released in theaters originally back in the 70s. And then if you want to see a different version of the movie, go with the director's cut. Okay, so that's shelf one of many. So let's keep going. Expendables 1, 2, and 3. These are dumb movies, and I got them on sale. What can I say? Face Off, one of the key action movies, and Cage and Travolta at their prime. Fargo, from the Coen brothers, a wonderful movie from the mid-90s. That's the cat shaking, don't worry about that. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. This is my favorite John Hughes film. I love this movie, a movie that I watched a lot when I was a kid. A Few Good Men, Aaron Sorkin with the screenplay, Rob Reiner with the direction, the acting on that movie. An awesome movie. Field of Dreams, Baseball, Dads, James Earl Jones. What's not to love with this movie? Then you got The Fifth Element, and this is one that I got on sale. I'm not as in love with this movie as a lot of other people are. I think that it's visually interesting, but I don't love that movie. Then there's Fight Club, another one. I think this was in my college dorm room, at least the DVD when I showed up, because it kind of had to be. Then you've got a 4-pack of some of my favorite horror movies, if you want to call them that. They're really, at some point, almost comedies. Final Destination, Final Destination 2, Final Destination 3, then The Final Destination. I blame these films for what Fast and the Furious is doing. First Blood, Rambo, the first Rambo film, completely different from the other Rambo films, but a great movie in its own right. First Man from Damien Chazelle, a great space movie, a Schmoedown nemesis of mine. I need to learn the cast of this movie. Then David Cronenberg, The Fly, one of the rare remakes that exceeds the original, Jeff Goldblum. Forrest Gump, why do I have this? It's a steelbook. I'm guessing it's because the price was right. It's kind of a cultural thing. This is a huge 90s cultural phenomenon, and the movie hasn't held up as well, but it's fine. Freddy vs. Jason, I like this movie. It's dumb fun. It's not great, but it's dumb fun. Friday Night Lights, if you haven't seen this, is based on the book that would then be, the concept was spun off into the TV series. This is a great movie. Friday the 13th, 8-movie collection. So this is the first 8 Friday the 13th movies, 1 through 3, Final Chapter, A New Beginning, Jason Lives, The New Blood, and Jason Takes Manhattan, which is really Jason is on a boat and then walks through Times Square for 2 minutes. Friday the 13th, The Killer Cut. Now, this is the remake of Friday the 13th, which I actually liked. Also, this one was signed by my friend Derek Mears, who plays Jason in this. He's played like a Predator. He played Swamp Thing. The nicest guy in the world. He's very nice to sign that for me. But I like that movie. The Fugitive, 1993. Hate this artwork. Wish that it was the original artwork, but a great movie. You find that man. Great Harrison Ford pointing. It's a seminal Harrison Ford point movie. It's killed my wife. Great movie. Galaxy Quest, we made a whole documentary over at Screen Junkies and Fandom about this movie. As a Star Trek fan, as an Alan Rickman fan, just a great movie overall. The Game, David Fincher, Michael Douglas, Sean Penn, a good movie. Game Night, if you like good comedies, recent comedies, and you haven't seen Game Night, this is great. Jesse Plemons in particular is great in this movie. Garden State, okay, listen, I had DVDs. I was upgrading my DVDs to Blu-rays, and I'm a completist, and this was cheap. This movie I thought was the deepest thing ever made when I was in college. So yeah. Whatever. It's my own shirt wallpaper. Geostorm. Okay, remember when I said about Gerard Butler movies? We have a soft spot for Gerard Butler in this household. This is a terrible film, but also incredibly entertaining to watch. You're going to see another one of these very soon. Get Out, also one of the picks for this month's Dan's Monthly Movie Club. Movies that I appreciated more on second watch. I liked this movie when I first saw it, but it really took me a couple watches to fully appreciate what Jordan Peele was doing in this film. Ghostbusters 2. This one has a painting. Ghostbusters 2016, which we bought because it was cheap. The 4K was cheap. It's fine. It's not great. Uh, The Gift, not the Katie Holmes movie, but the Gift. This one stars Jason Bateman and Joel Edgerton, and Rebecca Hall. Yeah, Rebecca Hall. It's directed by Joel Edgerton. This was given to me as a gift. This is an awesome little psychological thriller if you haven't seen it. Glass from M. Night Shyamalan. I defend this movie. Not a lot of people like this movie, or are very more mixed on it than I am. I like this movie personally, but I understand why people don't. Glengarry Glen Ross, one of my favorite movies from the 90s, from the David Mamet play and screenplay. Great performances all around. One of my favorite Jack Lemmon performances. The Godfather trilogy, this is the Coppola restoration when they restored the film. So this is all three movies. The first two are masterpieces. The third one is not terrible. I think it's fine. It's a fine movie standing next to two masterpieces, which makes it look worse. The original Godzilla film, this is a Criterion collection. Then the 2014 Godzilla film, which I really, really liked. I think Mara brought this one because she had a 3D TV. We don't, but she had one, so I think she brought that version. I told you we have a soft spot for Gerard Butler films. Mara is wearing this disc out. I have heard this movie on since we've been in quarantine at least 20 times. It is Mara, just explain to me what it is with Gods of Egypt. Why Gods of Egypt?
There are some gods of Egypt that people believed in that were not these.
Yeah.
At all.
No.
But I believe in them.
Yes. There you go. This movie is awful. Gone Girl, David Fincher movie. I think I actually bought this one at Amoeba. Hello, kitty.
Different kitty than the first kitty.
So I've got a cat in my lap now. Gone Girl, David Fincher. I think I bought this at Amoeba, which is a great LA store that is changing locations. They just left their historic location, which is very sad. Gone with the Wind. This is the Willy Wonka Golden Ticket edition, please. One of the most landmark films in American history. Again, some very important conversations that are had about this film, but its significance historically is unquestionable in my mind. Goodfellas, one of Scorsese's best movies. Again, like I said, I put this in Casino much closer to each other than a lot of other people would. Good Morning Vietnam. Actually bought this because it was cheap. Hi, kitty. Good Morning Vietnam actually was on sale. I bought it on Reputation alone. I actually haven't watched it yet. I should watch it because I've heard it's really good. That's why I bought it. Good Time from the Safdie brothers starring Robert Pattinson. One of my favorite movies of that year. They would make Uncut Gems, which I don't own, but is on Netflix right now, and I will own Uncut Gems at some point. Good Will Hunting, the Matt and Ben origin story, got Robin Williams an Oscar. I really like that movie. Gosford Park. If you like Downton Abbey, this is basically Downton Abbey, the prequel film. It was written by Julian Fellows, who did Gosford Park. It's directed by Robert Altman, the late great Robert Altman. This version is I ordered it off of Amazon, but it's like it's Gosford Park, and it's underneath it's like Un Weekend à Gosford Park. So on the back it says Canadian Home Video 14A rating. So I think that Amazon sent me something that was made for Canada. But it says made in the USA. This thing's all over the place, but the movie remains great. Then I've got the Criterion edition of The Graduate. Again, one of the key movies in cinema history, particularly if you're looking at the beginning of the modern era, or at least in the 60s and 70s. Grand Budapest Hotel, a great Wes Anderson movie. Also, Tony Revolori. Come on, who doesn't love Tony Revolori? Then Gravity 3D. This is a stunning movie, even at home, but more so in the theaters. One of the few that I would say was worth the 3D format. The Green Mile with Tom Hanks, Stephen King adaptation. Green Room from Jeremy Saulnier, great villain turn from Patrick Stewart, and also Anton Yelchin, one of the sadly one of his final performances. I love this movie. It's very difficult to watch. It's much like a Grindhouse film, like this movie, Grindhouse, which was presented the way that the original one. These were originally presented as two films back to back, linked by trailers, and this preserves that presentation. It's Planet Terror from Robert Rodriguez, Death Proof from Quentin Tarantino, but in the original presentation, which I saw on opening night theatrically at the Vista Theater here in Los Angeles. Groundhog Day, one of the best comedies ever made, directed by Harold Ramis, starring Bill Murray. Then we've got, and Andy McDowell, we've got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, that one is the 4K. This is a movie that I upgraded to 4K. You'll notice a lot of these, I keep the cardboard packaging, I keep these stickers and stuff because, I don't know, I'm weird. I like to preserve things how they came. This has got the 40 Years of Terror sticker on it. But this is John Carpenter's original Halloween, one of my favorite horror movies of all time. The Hangover, which I think was maybe my second Blu-ray disc. I was slow to start collecting Blu-ray discs. I think The Hangover might have been my second one. I have not seen this movie, Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, with Jeremy Renner and Gemma Archer. Gemma Archer.
Say Anna Karenina.
I can't. Okay, I have a problem with two names. One of them is the name of the book, Anna Karenina. Anna Karenina. Anna Karenina. Anna Karenina. Anna Karenina. If I say it slow, I can do it. Anna Karenina. Okay. Anyway, I can't say that book, and I also have a tough time with Gemma Archer. Gemma Arterton. Anyway, she starts with Jeremy Renner in this movie. Oh, man, we're going off the rails. Okay, The Happening from M. Night Shyamalan. I can say Shyamalan. You're going to see a lot more about this movie on the channel very soon, and perhaps why I enjoy it. Happy Death Day to You. Why we don't own the first Happy Death Day, I don't know, because I love it. I think this was probably just on sale. We are going to own the first Happy Death Day at some point. I actually liked the sequel. It was different from what people expected, which I think the reaction was a little bit different, but I liked it. Maybe not as much as the first one, but I enjoyed it. Happy Gilmore, my favorite of the 90s Adam Sandler comedies, and there's some really good ones, but that one's just goofy and silly. Then the Criterion edition of A Hard Day's Night. I love this. There's so much, not just the comedy in this film, which is pretty funny, but just the archive properties of just the Beatles in the 60s and their performances and stuff. Great to see. Okay, we're going to get into Harry Potter's now. So we've got Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Ooh, look at that. They started getting crazy with the covers there. Draco, Harry, Draco, Harry, Draco, Harry. I'm just trying to make this entertaining. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 1. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 2. Harry, Voldemort. Harry, Voldemort. Harry, Voldemort. Why are you even watching this? The Hateful Eight from Quentin Tarantino. Heat from Michael Mann. We've got Hell or High Water, which if you haven't seen Hell or High Water, is a great little movie. Jeff Bridges and Chris Pine. Ben Foster is in this. I love this movie a lot. Hello, my name is Doris. Oh, Sally Field. Sally Field is so great in this movie. It's directed by Michael Showalter, who did The Big Sick and did Lovebirds, which just came out. But Sally Field is amazing in that movie. You should check it out. Her from Spike Jonze with Joaquin Phoenix. Up until Joker, I think maybe my favorite Joaquin Phoenix performance. Hereditary. You've heard me say so much about Hereditary. Toni Collette robbed not only of an Oscar, but an Oscar nomination for this film. My favorite movie from a couple years ago. High Anxiety. This was on sale. This is a Mel Brooks comedy. It does a lot of Hitchcock parodies. It's not one of his best comedies, but I just like picking up Mel Brooks stuff when it's affordable because there's still laughs and there's still good stuff in here. These are not mine. The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, and The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. Funny story, we don't have the third one, just the first two. Why?
They were free.
Because they were free. I don't think we've watched any of those. Then Home Alone, which was a big movie of my childhood. Not so much Mara's childhood, but a big movie from my childhood. Then Home Alone 2, 25th Anniversary Edition. This is the same movie as the last one, but they're in New York. It's Lost in New York. It's right there in the title. Hook. I don't think I would probably like this movie very much if I hadn't grown up with it, but I did, so there is that nostalgia soft spot. It doesn't hold up as well as a lot of other movies. Hot Fuzz, one of my, part of the Cornetto trilogy. You know that I love Shaun of the Dead and World's End and Edgar Wright. How the Grinch Stole Christmas. This is the TV special, not the Jim Carrey movie, which I do not enjoy. In Bruges. Oh, I love this movie. This movie's hilarious. Martin McDonagh, who did Three Billboards, which you're going to see in a bit, with Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell. I think this is a great movie. In the Line of Fire. Ooh, what a cool 90s action film this is with Clint Eastwood and Rene Russo and a great villain turn from John Malkovich. We've got Inception. Your mind is the scene of the crime, right? Or something like that? Something like that. Anyway, a great movie from Christopher Nolan. Also like my mom's favorite movie. Every time I talk to her, I'm like, Mom, what'd you watch? She's like, I watched Inception again. I'm like, oh, that's great. I'm glad, Mom. The Incredible Hulk. It's a Marvel. Independence Day. I have this movie pretty much memorized. We've got Indiana Jones, The Complete Adventures, which consists of the 3 Indiana Jones movies that I acknowledge, and also, as a bonus feature, a fourth one. Inglourious Bastards, my favorite Quentin Tarantino film, co-starring a fellow Schmoedown champ, Sam Levine, amongst others, some Brad something. Ingrid Goes West. I love this movie. Aubrey Plaza is great in this movie. Very much takes on the social media of our time, but not in like a very obvious way. If you haven't seen Ingrid Goes West, I recommend it. Inside Out, my favorite Pixar movie. I love this movie. Interstellar from Christopher Nolan. Mara in particular is a fan of the science in this movie. There's a lot of other stuff we're not so much a fan of.
Space bookshelf.
Screw that space bookshelf. Then we've got Iron Man. There's some stickers on this that I tried to take off. This is another reason why you keep the stickers on, because otherwise they just get these fuzzy circles on your things. This is Iron Man. Iron Man 2. Iron Man 3. What do you know? Then we've got Stephen King's It. This is the 1990s miniseries, the one that aired on ABC. We've got that one. Then the 2017 movie. We don't have It Chapter 2 because I'm not the biggest fan of it, and I think this movie works on its own. So we may pick up It Chapter 2 if it's on sale or something, but I'm perfectly fine just having the one It movie. Then It's a Wonderful Life, obviously a holiday classic. Frank Capra, great movie. Donna Reed and James Stewart. Then we've got the Jack Ryan collection, which has Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit, Hunt for Red October, Patriot Games, Clear and Present Danger, The Sum of All Fears. Mara and I were trying to figure this out because I don't know what this orders. I don't know why Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit is all at the top here. If it's chronological, but then why is Sum of All Fears here? I think they're just trying to like trick you into like forgetting that these other two movies are in there. Not that they're terrible, but these other three are great. You got 4 Jack Ryans in 5 different movies here, but some good movies, good spy movies. Jackie Brown, Quentin Tarantino, Robert Forster sadly passed away, but is amazing in this movie. Then this is a Criterion box set of a director called Jacques Tati. He's a wonderful French director, comedy director. If you like Airplane and Naked Gun, it's that kind of humor. A lot of the comedy directors that would come later took great inspiration from him. These are all of his films. If you haven't seen any Tati movies, I would suggest start with Monsieur Hulot's Holiday and perhaps Playtime, and go from there. These are really wonderful films. I picked this up during the flash sale because I think that he is a great director. Then we have, this is another one, Jaws, one of my latest, oh, look at that. He's doing like an Ernest thing with his jaw there. Why does the jaw just shift back and forth? That's weird. Anyway, whatever, doesn't matter. This is the 4K, the new 4K disc that I'm very much looking forward to cracking open and checking out. Comes with a little booklet as well. I still have actually the previous version of Jaws, which was the Universal 100th Anniversary edition. I also have like 2 more in the closet over there, like my DVD copy. This is probably the 5th or 6th version of Jaws that I've owned. I'm a Jaws freak, which is why I have Jaws 2. I have Jaws 3, Jaws Goes to SeaWorld. I have Jaws The Revenge, Jaws Goes to Hell. At least the franchise does. Then I've got Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which came out my freshman year of college. This is a fun movie. I don't know. I have a soft spot for Kevin Smith, a fellow movie fights gladiator. And by the way, just like one of the nicest guys ever. Steve Martin, The Jerk. If you haven't seen The Jerk, you should. It's hilarious. Tom Cruise, Jerry Maguire, directed by Cameron Crowe. Renee Zellweger. Interns of Field star Jonathan Lipnicki, also in this film. Jingle All the Way, Put That Cookie Down. It's kind of a modern holiday classic. Mara hasn't seen it.
I think that might be this year's new edition.
Maybe that's this year's new edition. It's cheesy and weird, but great. Then we've got John Wick, probably Keanu's mid to late career defining role. John Wick Chapter 2. John Wick Chapter 3. Although you can't start putting Parabellum. You can't start putting subtitles in midstream. We're going all Fast and the Furious here. The Jungle Book, the 2016 version, which I think is a great film and I think actually improves on the animated version. Jurassic Park, one of my favorite movies of all time. Jurassic Park 3, not one of my favorite movies of all time. And then I don't know why this is here. This is not mine. This is not, I don't own this. I didn't buy this. Mara brought this to the house.
I did not buy this. I blame gnomes.
Yes. You know what? Neither of us bought this. This was placed, someone broke into our house and placed this on the shelf to embarrass me. And I don't know who that person was, but I will find them. And I will catch them. And I will not do anything because I'm not Liam Neeson. So we got the Justice League, Flashpoint Paradox. This is another DC animated film. I like this movie. It was pretty good. Then the original Karate Kid, not the remake, the original Karate Kid. Kill Bill Volume 1, Quentin Tarantino, Kill Bill Volume 2. I am looking forward to the day when these two are joined into an edition that we could have with just the one movie altogether. The Whole Bloody Affair, I think is what Tarantino calls it. Then The Killing, which is an early Kubrick movie. This is the Criterion edition. If you haven't seen, you should check out. Sterling Hayden, who you probably know from The Godfather, is wonderful in this movie. And it's just a really great little crime movie, heist film. Kingdom of the Spiders. This is one that I had on Blu-ray and couldn't upgrade for a long time. It's William Shatner. There's spiders taking over a small town. He plays a veterinarian named Rack. He rides horses because he's William Shatner and he gets to ride horses. It's dumb, but it's fun. I have the remake of King Kong because I had it on DVD. I'm a completionist, so if I had a movie on DVD, if I could find a cheap version, then I updated it on Blu-ray. I don't have the original though. It's criminal that I don't have the original King Kong. Why I don't, I couldn't tell you. King Kong vs. Godzilla was on sale for like $5. Plus Mara loves it, so we got that. Kingsman: The Secret Service and Kingsman: The Golden Circle. I like the original better, but the Golden Circle's okay. I don't like it as much as I did when it first came out. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, one of the great entries in the Robert Downey Jr. comeback. Shane Black, Val Kilmer is great in this as well. Knives Out, one of my favorite movies from last year. Kong Skull Island. I think this might have been the first 4K disc that I bought because I love how this movie looks. This is a great looking movie. Kubo and the Two Strings from Laika. I think my favorite Laika film. A great animated film. Sorry, I hit the mic there again. Then we've got LA Confidential from Curtis Hanson. Academy Award winning performance from Kim Basinger. And a great, just old throwback noir film. Labyrinth, starring David Bowie, Jim Henson, puppets, you name it. Yeah, you know Labyrinth. There's a baby. La La Land on 4K somewhere. Scott Mance's ears just started burning because I mentioned the name La La Land. I love this movie. I think that was my favorite movie the year that this came out. Lady and the Tramp, one of my favorite classic animated Disney films. I love rewatching this one all the time. Last Action Hero, I think a movie that was underappreciated in its time because it wasn't quite what people expected. Then we've got The Last Starfighter, which I haven't seen. This is one that's Mara's, but I'm sure that it's good. I've heard that it's good. The Criterion version of The Last Temptation of Christ from Martin Scorsese with Willem Dafoe. David Bowie, strangely, also in this movie. I really like that movie. Law Abiding Citizen with Gerard Butler and Jamie Foxx. And, I said Scott Mance's ears were burning. This movie features a pull quote from Scott Mance on the back. Fast-paced, gripping, and provocative. His ears were burning so much that I grabbed a disc very soon after La La Land. I wonder if he planned that somehow. He broke into our apartment and planted it. Lawrence of Arabia, one of the best movies ever made. If you can go see this on a big screen, try to if you can. The Lego Batman movie, I love this movie. The Lego Movie, I love this movie. The Lego Movie, the second part, it's good. Not as good as the other Lego movies, but not terrible. Les Miserables, I love the stage version. I wasn't a huge fan of the movie version, but Hugh Jackman is incredible in this movie, and if he hadn't been up for an Oscar the same year that Daniel Day-Lewis played Abraham Lincoln, then he would have won. But sadly, he did not. Lethal Weapon 4-pack, consisting of Lethal Weapon 1 through 4. That's pretty self-explanatory. Then we've got Liar Liar, one of my favorite Jim Carrey comedies. Life Itself, the Roger Ebert documentary based on his own memoir. I love this movie because I love Roger Ebert. He's a big part of why I'm into film criticism, a massive influence on me, and I think this is a great documentary. Then Life of Pi, which I didn't see until fairly recently, but really thought was a gorgeous film. So it was got a good deal on a 4K. So Life of Pi on 4K. The Lion King, the original animated Lion King. Obviously, I like this far better than the other animated / live action version that came out, whatever you want to call it. Little Shop of Horrors, another movie musical. This is the director's cut from Frank Oz. This is just a great little movie. Rick Moranis is awesome. I love Rick Moranis. The Lobster from Yorgos Lanthimos and Colin Farrell. One of the weirdest movies I've ever seen, but also a great movie. One of my favorites of that year. Logan. You know Logan. It's Wolverine. He's got claws. It's a great movie. Then London Has Fallen. Again, we have a sweet spot for Gerard Butler in this house. This is right in the middle between good Gerard Butler and bad Gerard Butler. If there's a Venn diagram, this movie's in the middle. Olympus Has Fallen, we'll talk about that one, but this movie's right in the middle. London Has Fallen. Then we've got the Lord of the Rings, the extended edition Blu-ray set, which is somehow smaller. This is somehow smaller because the DVDs were like twice as big. This was an upgrade from DVD. that I had. Then Lost in Translation from Sofia Coppola, starring Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson. I still think, because Sean Penn got that Oscar again for Milk, I wish that Bill Murray had gotten the Oscar for this movie, because Sean Penn was going to get his later anyway. The Lost Boys. I didn't see this movie until fairly recently. What a great piece of 80s this is from Joel Schumacher. Then we've got The Lost World, the sequel to Jurassic Park. It's okay. And then Love, Simon. If you haven't seen Love, Simon, Greg Berlanti directed it. A great teen love story. Really, I think, important film, and one that I enjoyed a lot. Okay, Mac and Me. It's like E.T., but it's literally sponsored by McDonald's. But when I say sponsored by McDonald's, it's part of it is set in a McDonald's. Ronald McDonald is in the movie. This movie is insane. If you've seen the Paul Rudd Conan clip, it comes from this movie. One of the weirdest chapters in movies. Mad Max Fury Road, one of the best movies of the 21st century. One of my favorite movies of all time. Mallrats, Kevin Smith, as I mentioned. I have all these View Askew universe movies, or at least a good number of them. The Man with No Name, if you can find this, what a deal this is. All three of the Man with No Name films, a fistful of dollars for a few dollars more, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in one collection. There was a great deal on this, but these are just three good movies anyway. The Manchurian Candidate, the Criterion edition. This is the original Manchurian Candidate with Frank Sinatra and Angela Lansbury. A great movie. Then The Martian, Ridley Scott, Matt Damon. He's out there on Mars. Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World, directed by Peter Weir. A great early Paul Bettany performance. Masters of the Universe, not directed by Peter Weir, nor does it have a great Paul Bettany performance, but it does have a guy named Gwildor. Then The Matrix, Matrix Reloaded, and Matrix Revolutions, all three in one. Really, you're here for this one, and then these others are kind of... They get the quality is literally in this order. But 3 for 1, why not? Then Meet the Parents. This is the only Meet the movie that I have, because I didn't really like the others, so I just have Meet the Parents. Memento, early Chris Nolan. This movie was a big one for me in college. The Men in Black trilogy, all three Men in Black movies. Minority Report, great sci-fi from Steven Spielberg. And I think this movie people are going to look back on and say, like, wow, this is a very predictive movie. Misery, Stephen King. Kathy Bates won the Oscar for that. This is a great one. And then we get on to our missions. We have Mission Impossible. We have Mission Impossible 2. We have Mission Impossible 3. This one's my favorite. We have Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, and Mission Impossible Fallout. They're all good except for 2. But what am I going to do? Like, not buy 2? So I have 2 because, again, I'm a weird completionist. Then we've got Moneyball from Brad Pitt, another script from Aaron Sorkin. This was a really good one. This is one where Jonah Hill got nominated for an Oscar. People are like, what? Jonah Hill? Like, yeah, he's great. Monty Python, definitely one of the best, if not the best, silly comedies of all time. I love absurdist humor. That's Monty Python. Moon from Duncan Jones, who is David Bowie's son, but more importantly, pretty damn good film director. Sam Rockwell is incredible in this movie. Then we've got Moonlight, which briefly didn't win and then did win Best Picture. And I also think when people look back on this decade, is going to be considered one of the most important movies of the decade. Has only grown in significance since it came out. I love Moonlight. This is one, I had this on VHS when I was a kid, Michael Jackson Moonwalker. I haven't revisited it yet, but I remember bits and pieces of this. Joe Pesci's a bad guy. He's got like a top knot ponytail. There's something about spiders. There's a bunch of music videos. I haven't revisited this yet, but I bought it because it was available on Blu-ray. This is an international version. I don't know where exactly. I think it's an all-region disc. I don't know. It was on Amazon for a good price. I have not revisited this. I think Michael Jackson turns into a car at the end of it. Or maybe a spaceship. Moulin Rouge from Baz Luhrmann, one of my favorite modern movie musicals, repurposing music from other films and pop culture. And then Mrs. Doubtfire. It's Robin Williams. He's a nanny. He's in a dress. That's all you need to know. Mrs. Doubtfire. Moving on to shelf 3. These are divided by how they are in my den. We have Brendan Fraser's The Mummy, the only Mummy movie that we acknowledge in this house. Well, actually, no, because we have the Universal Mummy. Basically just anything with the Tom Cruise one. Murder on the Orient Express, the remake of the Sidney Lumet movie, which I actually need to see. My Neighbor Totoro, which I have not seen any of the Studio Ghibli films. This is Mara bought this, and we're going to be diving into these very soon, so stay tuned because we're going to be talking about all of the Ghibli films here on the channel. Mystic River, I mentioned it before, and Oscar winner for Sean Penn, but I wish it would have gone to Bill Murray. The Naked Gun from The Files of Police Squad. I love good parody movies. This is one of the best parody movies. Leslie Nielsen was a comedy genius. The Neighbors and Neighbors 2. I think they're both good. I like both of these movies, so I have both of them. Network. One of my favorite movies of all time. So good. Stay tuned. You're going to be hearing a lot more about Network here on the channel. This is a double feature, 2 documentaries. Never Sleep Again, which is a breakdown. These are like 4-hour documentaries of the Nightmare on Elm Street film series, which I've probably watched 5 or 6 times. I love that documentary. And then Crystal Lake Memories, which is a similar thing, but for Friday the 13th. They're both good, but Never Sleep Again in particular I think is great. If you love the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, I think that's a must-watch. The Never-Ending Story, which is false advertising because it does in fact end. The Nice Guys with Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe, a great Shane Black film. I have the Criterion edition of Night of the Living Dead, one of the most important horror films of all time, and also just a timeless cultural film from George Romero. Then we've got Nightcrawler. Jake Gyllenhaal should have been nominated for an Oscar for this movie. He wasn't, and that is criminal almost. The late Bill Paxton also in that movie. Then I have the Nightmare on Elm Street collection. This is the first 7 Nightmare on Elm Street films. So the original, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, then Dream Warriors, Dream Master, Dream Child, the Freddy's Dead, and then New Nightmare. New Nightmare is a fantastic movie, underrated, I think. No Country for Old Men, a Best Picture winner from the Coen brothers. Notes on a Scandal, if you have not seen this movie. Judi Dench and Cate Blanchett. Judi Dench, I believe, was Oscar nominated, or Cate Blanchett was one of them. This is a great kind of psychological, almost psychosexual thriller. Highly recommend that one. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? A great Coen brothers set in the Depression in the 20s movie. And then I've got the Oceans 4 film collection. And 8, 11, 12, and 13. I just feel like they have to make 9 and 10 at this point because it's just a weird... The numbering is weird at this point. Office Space. Most people my age probably saw this for the first time on Comedy Central, but I've got the Blu-ray here. Old School came out when I was in college. Frank the Tank, all that fun stuff. Hard to believe this movie is coming up on 20 years old. That is insane. Olympus Has Fallen with Gerard Butler. I think this goes in the good Gerard Butler circle. I don't think it goes in the middle. I think this is, I like this movie. Better than White House Down. I knew that was coming. I've got another Criterion edition here, On the Waterfront, an Elia Kazan film with Marlon Brando and Eva Marie Saint, Carl Malden, one of the great movies ever made. Then The Outsiders. I don't know if I have actually watched this version. I've seen The Outsiders, but this is the one that's the complete novel. This was directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Like the names in this movie, crazy. It's a who's who of a lot of the box office stars. Over the Top, one of my favorite Sylvester Stallone movies. It is indeed over the top. This is another one of those weird things. It's over the top / bras de fer, which I don't know what country this was originally supposed to go to. It's in French. Maybe this is another Canadian version. I don't know, but it's a really good movie. That's all I care. I mean, it's not, but it is. You know how it is. Then Pacific Rim, another one of these lenticular covers. I like this movie. I know a lot of people don't, but I do. Now, I don't have the first Paddington, and I don't know why, but I have Paddington 2, and that's enough. I like Paddington 2, and I like Paddington. I'm sure Paddington is one that we will eventually get. This is the Criterion edition.
I believe you mean
Paddington. Yes, I like to say it in a very English way. Paddington. This is the Criterion edition of Pan's Labyrinth from Guillermo del Toro. Then we have The Patriot, which I actually don't mind. This is an extended cut. I don't know if I've actually watched the extended cut, but I know the original Mel Gibson movie set during the Revolution. Heath Ledger also in that film. The Perfect Storm with George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg. Then we've got Peter Rabbit. This is just fun for Mara and I. I actually like this movie, and it was at a good price. It's a fun kids movie. I don't mind it at all. Pete's Dragon, one of the weirdest things that Disney ever made. It's a live-action animation hybrid film with a lot of scary hillbillies in it. Then we've got the Phantom of the Opera 25th anniversary concert at, where is this? At the Royal Albert Hall. I love the musical. Mara and I actually both love the musical Phantom of the Opera, so we picked that up. I don't know if we watched that one, but I like it.
No,
We have not. But Mara's seen it. It's great. Phantom Thread, the movie that Roxy and I agree on. One of my favorite movies that year. Philadelphia, a landmark film with Tom Hanks and Denzel Washington. Pineapple Express, a similarly landmark film with James Franco and Seth Rogen. This is probably my favorite of the classic Disney animation, Pinocchio. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite movies ever made. Then we've got the 3 Pirates films. I guess I should say the first 3 Pirates films: Curse of the Black Pearl, Dead Man's Chest, At World's End. These three get progressively more confusing as you go. I don't have the other Pirates films because I see no reason to buy them. This is another Best Picture winner with this. I think it's this Best Buy artwork, Platoon. This is probably the more familiar imagery associated with the film. Yeah, Best Picture winner, Oliver Stone directed film there. Then you have a Criterion edition of The Player. If you haven't seen The Player, it's a great Robert Altman movie about the movie business. It stars Tim Robbins. Point Break, seminal 90s film from Catherine Bigelow, action film with Keanu and Patrick Swayze, the late great Patrick Swayze. Poltergeist, which this is another movie I didn't come to until very recently, and I really dug this movie. It's a great 80s horror movie. I really, really like this, produced by Steven Spielberg. Some would say he stepped in and did more than produce it. Pop Star, Never Stop, Never Stopping. One of the dumbest movies to come out in a long time, but also one of the most, it did like little to no box office. This has some of the funniest moments in a comedy that I've seen in quite a while. So if you like The Lonely Island specifically, The Poseidon Adventure. This is a disaster movie, kind of one of those all-star cast disaster movies. I like this movie a lot. Gene Hackman, Leslie Nielsen playing the straight man, which is very weird. Shelley Winters. You see so many of these faces and you know them. This is the 4K version of Predator. I actually haven't upgraded and watched the 4K print of this yet, but this is the 4K version of Predator, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. The Prestige, Christopher Nolan, obviously. I think maybe one of his forgotten films. Then you have The Princess Bride, obviously, As You Wish. A key film from my childhood, Problem Child. It's about John Ritter and Amy Yazbek, and they adopt like the devil himself as a child. They kept the artwork from the 80s, which I love. This is just like probably one of those movies. If you were a kid at a certain point, you know this movie, and if not, you probably never heard of it. Then I've got two versions of The Producers. There's the Mel Brooks version, which won an Oscar for its screenplay, which is one of the best comedies ever made, and then we have the movie adaptation of the musical, which the musical is good. This didn't quite hit the right notes, largely because they cast it with stars. But I have it because I like the musical. This is the 50th anniversary edition of Psycho, so I've got that on its own. And then I also have the Psycho 4 movie collection. The sequels to Psycho, well, Psycho 2 actually I think is a pretty underrated movie. Psycho 3 is okay. Psycho 4 is not very good, but there's a good deal in this, and I actually like the sequels to the film to varying degrees. Pulp Fiction, Quentin Tarantino, obviously a landmark film. The Criterion edition of Punch Drunk Love, Paul Thomas Anderson. If you saw Uncut Gems and you want to see a similar type of role from Adam Sandler, as far as something you wouldn't expect, check out Punch Drunk Love. I have not seen Puss in Boots. Mara loves this. We picked this up for Mara. It was a good deal. We met Puss in Boots at Universal Studios, and it was amazing. It was a lot of fun. And then we have the Queen, Oscar-winning role for Helen Mirren, playing Queen Elizabeth II. We have two of my favorite action films of this century, The Raid Redemption, and The Raid 2. If you like action, check out these movies immediately if you've not seen them. Then I have Rain Man, the 25th anniversary edition of Rain Man, Oscar-winning role for Dustin Hoffman. Raising Arizona from the Coen brothers, one of my favorite directors, Edgar Wright. This is one of his favorite movies, if you haven't seen it. Very quirky comedy with Nicolas Cage and Holly Hunter. Then you have Rambo. See, this is the thing. I don't want this artwork. I want the greased up machine gun Rambo. This is Rambo First Blood Part 2. This one's a little bit better as far as artwork goes with Rambo 3, but I wish they'd kept the iconic Rambo artwork for this. But these are the next two films in the Rambo series. This is Ready Player One from Steven Spielberg. I love that this has a Snapchat thing on the front. This is why I like to keep these stickers, because, who knows in 10 years if we're going to be looking at that and saying Snap for an augmented reality experience. What does that mean? I'm a big fan of Ready Player One. Then we have Red. These are actually all three Mara's films. Red and Red 2, which I have seen Red. I have not seen Red 2. And then the remake of Red Dawn, which I also have not seen. I remember it was weird because they changed the villain to be, I don't know, that's a weird thing.
It was cheap.
Mara says it was cheap. This was Red Dragon from Brett Ratner, which was the prequel movie. It was actually a remake of Manhunter from Michael Mann, which is a better movie. This one I had on with William Peterson and Brian Cox. This one is one I had on DVD. I still think it's okay. It's not great, but it's okay. I haven't watched this yet. This is Reign of the Supermen, the DC animated film. This is one of my favorite comic book storylines of all time, but I haven't watched this movie yet. Requiem for a Dream, one of the most effective movies of all time. Ellen Burstyn should have won an Oscar for her performance in that. Then Reservoir Dogs from Quentin Tarantino, the movie that obviously he burst onto the scene with this film. This is Richard III, and I was very happy to find this. If you have not seen this version of Richard III, it's set in sort of a neo-fascist England. Ian McKellen plays Richard III. I like Shakespeare adaptations, and this is one of my favorites. So if you like Richard III and you haven't seen this, or if you want to see a wonderful Ian McKellen performance, check out this movie. Then we have Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which kicked off the new Apes series. Hello, Joe Starr again. Roadhouse with P. Swayze, Patrick Swayze. This is just the biggest, dumbest, funnest 80s action of them all. There's throat ripping, there's you name it. Road to Perdition from Sam Mendes, also one of the last films from the cinematographer Conrad L. Hall. I want to make sure I got the initial right. Conrad L. Hall, one of the great cinematographers of all time. Beautiful movie, early Daniel Craig performance as well in there. The animated version of Robin Hood. I think it's okay. It was at a good price, and there's some nostalgia attached, so I've got that one. The Superior Robin Hood Men in Tights, starring Carrie Elwes from Mel Brooks. Then one of my favorite movies, you've seen me do a very long video about it here on this channel, RoboCop from Paul Verhoeven. I love RoboCop. Another great 90s action film, The Rock from Michael Bay. I think this is one of the perfect action movies. Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage. I love this movie. The Rocketeer, which I loved when I was a kid, and I think is finally getting some of the acclaim that it should have gotten when it first came out. Then I picked this up, I think it's for a deal, Rocket Man with Taron Egerton playing Elton John. This is a really good movie that I enjoyed last year. I thought Taron Egerton was fantastic. Didn't get the credit necessarily that he deserved for that role. Then you have Rocky, the Heavyweights collection, which is, it's Rocky, let me see, is it Rocky 1 through 4, I think? It's, no, I'm sorry. First of all, I forgot that there was a Rocky 5, but you can't blame me for that. This one also has Rocky Balboa. So it's Rockies 1 through 5, as well as Rocky Balboa, all there. I love the Rocky movies, except for Rocky 5. Even as a Rocky fan, I'm just not on board. Then we've got Rogue One, a Star Wars story, another film from Baz Luhrmann, a crucial film for me in high school, which was William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. All the girls in my class, this movie and Titanic, everyone was in love with Leonardo DiCaprio. I had a crush on Claire Danes. Then we've got Room. Mara gave me a dirty look. Then we've got Room, which was Brie Larson's Oscar-winning film, and The Room from Tommy Wiseau. These are the two favorite movies of mine that are next to each other on a shelf. Room and The Room. What a story, Mark. Then we have Rosemary's Baby, the Criterion Collection edition, as well as the Criterion Collection of the Royal Tenenbaums, which is maybe my favorite Wes Anderson movie. It's such a good movie. Everyone in that movie is fantastic. Also, there is the Christmas. I see a lot of these Christmas specials because I watched them when I was a kid. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the Rankin and Bass stop-motion animated special. I have that. Rudy, one of the great sports/inspiration movies. There's a lot of great slow claps and stuff. This is one that I picked up. A lot of times I'll go to these sales where the different places will be selling their inventory. So this is a rental copy of Rush from Ron Howard with Daniel Bruhl and Chris Hemsworth. If you haven't seen, that's a really good movie. Criterion edition of Rushmore. Most of Wes Anderson's films are available in Criterion edition, so I got one there for Rushmore. This is another one. You're killing me, Smalls. The Sandlot. A great movie that it was a big rainy day movie in school when I was growing up. They put that on in a rainy day. Saving Private Ryan, one of my favorite Steven Spielberg films. Probably when I lost my faith in the Oscars was when Saving Private Ryan did not win Best Picture. I don't remember why we bought the 7-film collection of Saw. Saw 2. It was $4.99. You get Saw, Saw 2, Saw 3, Saw 4, Saw 5, Saw 6, and Saw the final chapter, which of course was not the final chapter. The first movie I liked. The rest of these I'm not a huge fan of, but yeah, I don't know. But it was cheap. Sometimes a good deal is a good deal, so we just bought them. Whatever. Say Anything, another Cameron Crowe film. This is one of my favorite movies of the 80s. This is so good. The boombox scene obviously is what people remember, but it's also just a really well-written, really great movie. Schindler's List from Steven Spielberg. Obviously, in 1993, he gives Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, which won the Oscar for Best Picture. This is Mara's favorite movie. This is an enormously powerful movie. Has not lost an ounce of that power since it was released. School of Rock with Jack Black, one of my favorite Jack Black performances. Scott Pilgrim versus the World. World from Edgar Wright. Then we have the this is a little confusing. It's the 5-film set for Scream, but it only contains Scream 1 through 3. So 3 of the 5 films are Scream films, and then there's the Still Screaming Ultimate Scary Movie Retrospective and the Scream The Inside Story. So it's 5 movies, but only 3 of them are Scream movies. And then we have Scream 4, which is not included in the 5-movie Scream set. I get why people get frustrated with physical media. Searching. If you haven't seen Searching, this is such a great movie. Starring John Cho. Go watch this. If you haven't seen this, go watch this. It's a great movie. The Criterion edition of Seven Samurai. Seven Samurai is one of the most essential films ever made from Akira Kurosawa. So many other movies took their formula from this film. So so much of Kurosawa's work is the backbone of a lot of filmmaking. But Seven Samurai is one of the most influential of them all. So check out Seven Samurai if you haven't seen it. Then The Shallows, starring Blake Lively, which Mara and I saw, and it was cheap, and actually it's not a terrible movie. It's one of the better shark movies that's not Jaws. The Shape of Water, which is a Best Picture winner. I like that movie a lot, so we have that. Then Shaun of the Dead, which with Jaws is my favorite movie, or one of my top 2 favorite movies. Again, Edgar Wright, the Cornetto trilogy. I love this movie. I've seen it countless times. Then The Shawshank Redemption. This looks like it's a steel book. I don't know. I must have upgraded at some point, but yeah, got Shawshank Redemption here. Then Shazam, which this is one of my favorite lenticular covers as far as like the difference in the image. I like Shazam a lot. I was a big fan. I was convinced that Shazam was going to be a massive box office hit, and it was not. It goes to show what I know. I'm taking my best guess, just like everybody else. The Shining, Stanley Kubrick, Jack Nicholson, obviously a big, huge movie. Shoot 'em Up. If you haven't seen this is like a live-action cartoon. Paul Giamatti playing Elmer Fudd with Clive Owen as Bugs Bunny. This is a crazy movie. Who's the director here? Written and directed by Michael Davis. This movie is nuts. If you haven't seen it, you can find it. It's a live-action cartoon, essentially. Sicario from Denis Villeneuve, and a great cinematography from Roger Deakins, and great performances from Emily Blunt and Benicio del Toro. So much to love about this movie. Another Alexander Payne movie, Sideways, with Paul Giamatti and Thomas Hayden Church. Virginia Madsen is also in this movie, and she's very, very good. Signs from M. Night Shyamalan. This movie scared the crap out of me when I saw it. Then I've got the Criterion edition of The Silence of the Lambs. Best Picture, won the Big 5 Academy Awards. Just a great movie. Culturally, one of those just phenomenally good movies. The Simpsons movie, which I like. I enjoy The Simpsons movie. I don't watch much Simpsons at all, but I enjoyed this movie anymore. I used to watch a bunch, but I like the movie. Then we've got Sin City from Robert Rodriguez, the adaptation of Frank Miller. Frank Miller also a co-director on that film with guest director Quentin Tarantino. Sing Street, one of my favorite recent movies. If you haven't seen Sing Street, I'm sure you've seen me talk about it elsewhere. Singing in the Rain, one of the best movie musicals of all time. If you haven't seen Singing in the Rain, go find it right now. The Sixth Sense, M. Night Shyamalan, Bruce Willis, Haley Joel Osment. Snakes on a Plane. I love this monkey fighting movie on this monkey fighting plane, Monday to Friday plane. This is not the edited for TV version. This is the, I think, intentionally made rated R version. This movie is dumb, but I love it. Then we've got Snatch from Guy Ritchie, a great weirdo performance from Brad Pitt in this movie. Maybe the most important movie of the 21st century, The Social Network. It seemed like news at the time and is now predicted so much of our future. This is a movie like the movie Network that I think is going to be more relevant as it gets older. By the way, just a really good movie as well. This is the Criterion edition of Some Like It Hot, Billy Wilder, Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon, Marilyn Monroe. Great comedy, one of the great comedies. Sorry to Bother You from Boots Riley. Oh, man, I love this movie. One of the craziest, weirdest movies that I've seen in a long time, but it's a great one. You should check it out. Also, The Sound of Music. Now, I bought this because it was at a good price. I've never actually seen The Sound of Music, and it's one of the most successful films of all time. So this is one. It's a time commitment. I have to sit down and watch this because this is a huge blind spot for me. So I've got to check out The Sound of Music. Then South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. I still think this is more than just the fart jokes. I still think this is an insanely smartly written, well-written film. One of the great satires of the late 20th century. And a great musical, a really good musical. Then we've got Spaceballs from Mel Brooks. Mara loves this movie. I mean, I like it. I've never been as crazy about Spaceballs as everybody else has. Maybe I need to watch it again. I don't know. Then we have Spectre. You'll see in a minute, I have all the other James Bond movies anyway, so I have to. I'm a weirdo. What can I say? Then we've got Speed. It's got this weird Best Buy artwork. It also has this weird. Just keep the poster was fine, but the movie is great. So. The Spider-Man trilogy, Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3 from Sam Raimi. So these are the Raimi movies. Then I've got Spider-Man Homecoming featuring everyone's favorite. I'm talking, of course, about Tony Revolori. And then Spider-Man Far From Home, also featuring everyone's favorite Flash Thompson, Tony Revolori. And Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, one of the best movies, one of the best Spider-Man movies, one of the best comic book movies, one of the best animated movies, one of the best movies. I was so glad this movie came in. It's right there. It's right there behind me. I was so glad this movie came in and actually got the awards and stuff that it deserved. Came in late into the game. Such a great movie. Then we've got Split, the one that kicked off the M. Night Shyamalan Unbreakable trilogy, or at least was the second one after Unbreakable, and made us realize that it was a trilogy. Spotlight, a Best Picture winner. I love journalism movies. I love procedurals, so I love this movie. Spy from Paul Feig, Melissa McCarthy, really funny in this film. An underrated comedy that came out a couple years ago, The Spy Who Dumped Me. I actually think this also works as a really good action movie with Mila Kunis and Kate McKinnon. If you're just looking for something you haven't seen that you think you might enjoy, give this movie a shot. I think you might like it. Then we have Stand By Me, a great Stephen King adaptation. I hate this. So many of these discs have terrible artwork. The artwork is fine as it was. Then I have the original series Star Trek Motion Picture Collection, Star Trek's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. It also has the Captain's Summit, which is a meeting of all of the different actors that had played captains throughout Star Trek. So these are the original motion picture first 6 films. I also have the director's cut of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, which actually does add some things of substance to the film, if you have not seen that. Then I've got the Next Generation motion picture collection, which would be Generations, First Contact, Insurrection, and Nemesis. This also has Evolutions, which is sort of another documentary type thing. So these are the next gen movies. And then I've got the Kelvin timeline. I have Star Trek 09. I do have Star Trek Into Darkness because, again, I'm a weird completionist and it was like $5. I waited till it was $5. I don't like that movie very much. And then Star Trek Beyond, which I like, but I can see why it didn't do as well as it should have. Then I think this is hilarious. This is Star Wars The Complete Saga. See, there was a time when they sold to all of us that Star Wars was finished, and so they put something out on Blu-ray that was called Star Wars The Complete Saga. It turned out it was not The Complete Saga at all. So this is Star Wars, the first 6 movies. It was the first time that they were made available on Blu-ray, and so I bought it thinking that it was a whole story, when in fact it wasn't, because Star Wars would continue with Star Wars The Force Awakens and Star Wars The Last Jedi, which I have on 4K. I have not yet bought Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker because I'm just not the biggest fan of it, honestly, and I will buy it eventually to complete the set, but I'm going to wait until the price comes down because it's just not something that I feel like I need to rush out and buy right away. Then The Sting, if you haven't seen The Sting, it's a Best Picture winner, also just one of the great convoluted kind of heist caper films, both Robert Redford and Paul Newman doing what they do best here. Straight Outta Compton, F. Gary Gray gave this film such an energy, such a propulsive energy, and then having O'Shea Jackson Jr., it's such a great cast. Check this out. I really like this movie. Another musical, Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, directed by Tim Burton. I'm a little taken or leave it on Sondheim, but I think the performances in this movie are great, and I like the music as well. Then we've got Swingers, one of the big movies of the mid-90s, and particularly LA culture. Swiss Army Man. A lot of people didn't like this movie. I like this movie a lot, actually. I haven't watched it in a while. I want to give it a rewatch. It's weird, but I like it, strangely. The Sword and the Stone, another classic Disney animated film. This one is weird too, but it's one I watched all the time when I was a kid, so I wanted to upgrade and have it on Blu-ray. Sunset Boulevard, one of the best movies ever made. Again, Billy Wilder, you'll hear that name a lot, but also Gloria Swanson as Norma Desmond, one of the most, I'll use the word, iconic performances of all time. William Holden, also great in this film. Superbad, Jonah Hill, Michael Cera. they've remade this movie a bunch of times and under a bunch of different things. So I have the Superman films, but I have them in all kinds of weird combinations. So this one is a triple feature. That's Superman the movie, and then Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, which was the director's cut, kind of a preliminary run for the Snyder cut, and then Superman Returns, which is the Brandon Routh version of Superman. And then there's a separate Superman box set, which also includes Superman the movie, Superman 2, Superman 3, and then Superman 4 and Superman Returns. I think I just bought these at different times and got them when and where I could. But I've got, all of the Warner Brothers Superman films. And I've got the Superman 4 back there. I don't have Man of Steel, but those are the kind of Christopher Reeves Donnerverse Superman movies. Then we have Talladega Nights, which I really, really like. I think that's a funny film. Robert De Niro's one of his star-making turns, although he'd already won an Oscar, and Taxi Driver from Martin Scorsese. Again, one of the most famous movies of all time, and hugely influential, as you can see from movies like Joker. Team America, World Police. I still think, again, Trey Parker and Matt Stone were so good at like political satire. This is another great satire of its time, and I wish that we could see more of that kind of stuff from these guys, because I think this is a hilariously funny movie, but also a great satire on American culture. Teen Wolf, Michael J. Fox. Some people like the MTV version. This was the Teen Wolf I grew up with. Then a triple feature of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 3 live action films, or at least the first 3 live action films that came out when I was a kid. A movie by Cecil B. DeMille, The 10 Commandments, which is usually on TV right around Easter time / Passover. Mara and I both like this movie for different reasons.
I remember when there were 2 of them in the VHS.
Yeah, they used to come in two VHSs. That's how long this movie is. Then the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, one of the quintessential horror films that I think is still so effective and gritty and grimy and well done. Bad artwork. Good movie, bad artwork. I don't like this artwork for the Terminator, but I have the Terminator. And then the 4K version of Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Better artwork, but again, what was wrong with the poster images that they already had? And then I have Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. I don't hate this movie. Yes, there are some really bad parts of it, but I kind of like where it ended. I wish that they had left the Terminator series here. This is one of my favorite movies, That Thing You Do, which was Tom Hanks' directorial debut. This has 2 versions on it. It has the theatrical version and the director's cut. If you haven't seen That Thing You Do, watch the theatrical version first. If you like it, watch the director's cut, because the stuff that's added isn't really necessary, but it's fun if you love the movie. Luckily, they're both available on this disc. Still, this movie, one of my favorites. Also, one of my favorites, There Will Be Blood. I think it's maybe one of the best movies of the 21st century so far. I've seen this movie probably a dozen times. It's about 3 hours long. It never feels old, and it never drags for me. Daniel Day-Lewis is brilliant in this film. There's Something About Mary, a hugely popular film in the late 90s. I haven't revisited this one in quite a while, so I can't really say how well it holds up. But I can say how well this one holds up. This is John Carpenter's The Thing, one of the great tour de force in practical effects and horror. The Third Man, if you haven't seen The Third Man, it's Carol Reed's a great noir film starring Joseph Cotten and Orson Welles. See this movie. This is such a great movie set in Vienna. I really enjoy this movie. Rob Reiner's This Is Spinal Tap. This is not a Christopher Guest movie, although Christopher Guest is in it, and he would later go on to do movies in this style. This movie is hilarious. This Is the End, another really funny movie about the apocalypse. That's a who's who of people. Some of them were already stars, some of them were becoming stars. This Means War. Haven't seen it. This is Mara's.
It's charming.
It's charming. You got Chris Pine and Tom Hardy, so, can't really go wrong there. You got Reese Witherspoon, and Tom Hardy's not wearing a mask. Then we have the Thors. We've got Thor. We have Thor: The Dark World. We have Thor: Ragnarok. That's one of the ones we got on 4K, because that movie looks so crazy. Then, as I mentioned, from Martin McDonagh, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Sorry, I had to make sure I got the title right. An Oscar-winning role for Frances McDormand. An Oscar-winning role for Sam Rockwell. Then we have this box set of the Tim Burton collection, which comes with some Blu-rays and then a little book. This one had Batman and Batman Returns, which I have already in other editions, but it also has Beetlejuice, Mars Attacks, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and then Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which and then Tim Burton's Corpse Bride. So this is really more of just the combined, it's got some low points, but it's got some really high points too. I just think it's a nice little box set. I like the art. I like the booklet that comes with it. So again, if you're looking to get into Tim Burton, that's not a bad primer. Then we've got Titanic. I still like this movie. I liked it when it came out. I still like this movie. I don't know exactly when it became kind of cool to bash on Titanic, but I like Titanic. This is a Laserdisc you see behind me, Tombstone, one of my favorite Westerns, and one of my favorite performances in a Western. Val Kilmer is so good in this movie. Kurt Russell, though, also good, but also Sam Elliott, but also Bill Paxton, but also Dana Delaney, I think, is in that movie. I really, really like that movie. Tommy Boy, David Spade. This is a stupid movie, but I love it. And the late, great Chris Farley, his best movie. Then the Criterion edition of Tootsie, which is Dustin Hoffman plays a struggling actor who poses as a woman. But we watched this not too long ago. I think it holds up, actually. I was kind of surprised with how well it held up. Top Gun, we may see that sequel, maybe Christmas, I guess we're hearing right now. But a huge movie of the 80s. Total Recall, another Paul Verhoeven film, and another Arnold Schwarzenegger film. Get your ass to Mars. I like that movie. Another one of the all-star 70s disaster films, The Towering Inferno, including, you've got, Paul Newman, you've got Steve McQueen, you've got Faye Dunaway, you've got Fred Astaire in this, and also O.J. Simpson. So there you go. Then we have Toy Story, Toy Story 2, and Toy Story 3. These were sold in some kind of weird, again, this was on Amazon. It's not their, I think they're all region, but they were sold on Amazon in a different, you couldn't get them for US versions. I don't know exactly how it works, but the first 3 Toy Story films. I also like Toy Story 4. I'll probably buy that one eventually when the price drops a little bit, because it's available elsewhere. It's on Disney Plus, I think, etc. Tron Legacy, I've not seen. Mara brought it, and she likes it a lot.
I do, and you fell asleep when we tried to watch it.
I fell asleep when we tried to watch it.
During the light cycle games of all parts.
I fall asleep when we try to watch most things. I'm showing my age, as you can tell here in my beard. Tropic Thunder, very funny comedy. There has been recent revisiting of this movie, particularly Robert Downey Jr.'s role. I think that it's a lot more nuanced than a lot of the discourse would say regarding what he's doing in this movie and the character that he's playing. I think that this movie still holds up because it's making fun of actors and how stupid and arrogant they are. I still like this movie. Traffic from Steven Soderbergh, a movie that I was pulling for in the Oscars, but that did not win the Oscar. But this is a great movie, a great cast, and an Academy Award-winning role for Benicio del Toro. Okay. Transformers: Dark of the Moon. And if that wasn't bad enough, literally, Transformers: Age of Extinction. Maybe my least favorite movie of all time. Gnomes. Mara blames this one on gnomes.
These were free, though.
They were also free. That's still too expensive in my book.
Only have those two.
Twister, one of the big dumb 90s disaster films. There's just an honest trailer for this over on Screen Junkies. I love this movie. If you think it's stupid, you're right. Unforgiven, Best Picture winner starring Clint Eastwood, one of the greatest westerns of all time. Then this is really cool. This is a box set for the Universal Classic Monsters. It comes with a little booklet that you can flip through, but this really does have, it's got Bela Lugosi's Dracula, it has the original Frankenstein, it's got The Mummy with Boris Karloff, it has The Invisible Man with Claude Rains, this has Bride of Frankenstein, The Wolf Man, the Claude Rains version of the Phantom of the Opera, and it also has Creature from the Black Lagoon. So if you're into the Universal monsters, if you want to get into that, if you can find this, there's a few different versions of this box set, but this really does have the essentials and the ones that the must-sees, and you can of course go way deeper. Like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein is a great movie that we don't own. We own it digitally. We don't have on physical media, but this is a great box set if you want to get into the classic Universal monsters, and if you can find it. This is a great find, and I was super excited to get this one. The Untouchables, a Brian De Palma movie. Sean Connery won an Oscar for this. I like this movie a lot. The Upgrade, which is like Venom but not Venom, and the guy looks like Tom Hardy too. What's his name? Thank you, Logan Marshall Green. He looks like Tom Hardy, but this is a great little action movie from Lee Winnell, who is going on to make lots of great stuff at this point. Us, the second film from Jordan Peele, a great film. I love this movie. The Usual Suspects. Boy, there's lots of names associated with this movie, but the movie itself is still a very twisty murder mystery. We talk about weird performances. Benicio del Toro gives a great weird performance in this film. That's an Oscar winner for in a couple of different categories. V for Vendetta. I like this movie. One of the better graphic novel adaptations on film. And then this was one of those 3-packs. We had V for Vendetta already, but this is also the director's cut, Zack Snyder's cut of Watchmen, the Snyder cut, I guess you'd call it, of Watchmen, as well as a Constantine, starring Keanu Reeves. So we got this. I think we also got this largely for Schmodown purposes because studying for the Schmodown. Yeah, we hadn't seen Constantine. So this one still has the Amoeba price sticker on it. Well, that's a faux pas. Varsity Blues. I snuck into it when I was 16 years old. It's about football playing folks. It's got you got the Beak, you got James Vanderbeek, you got John Voight, you have Paul Walker, Ali Larder, Amy Smart. This might be the most 90s movie and the most 90s movie cast of the 90s, the late 90s. I don't want your life. This is not a good movie, but I love it. I just mentioned Venom. This is the non-upgrade version of Venom. Venom starring Tom Hardy, a movie which I infamously enjoyed and still enjoy. Yes, it's dumb, but it's also not dumb. It's weird.
Dumb.
It's weird. It's good weird is what it is. Walk the Line with Reese Witherspoon and Joaquin Phoenix. Reese Witherspoon won the Academy Award for this. Directed by James Mangold. James Mangold has made a lot of great movies. I don't think that people necessarily always give him credit for. War for the Planet of the Apes, the last film in the New Apes trilogy, which I really enjoyed. Did not do that well at the box office. Steven Spielberg's version of War of the Worlds, starring Tom Cruise. Warm Bodies, and I'll tell you why I own this. It's because we did a video, one of my first videos at Screen Junkies on Warm Bodies. We did a video, and it is a special feature on this Blu-ray. So it's fun because I get to look at, there's a special feature on the Blu-ray that I edited. It's got Hal in it. It's a lot of fun. So that's why we own Warm Bodies. The movie's all right, but the special feature is the one that's fun. I'm trying to think if it's even back here. Zombie Acting Tips with Rob Corddry. If you have this Blu-ray, I think the end card from our Screen Junkie show is actually attached to the special features, which doesn't make any sense. Then 2 comedies, Wayne's World and Wayne's World 2. I think that Wayne's World 2 is the rare comedy sequel that meets or exceeds the original. It's a little more like a parody, but it's also really funny. You might not like it as much now because it's very tied into a lot of like specific cultural jokes as far as timeliness. Then the 50th anniversary edition of West Side Story. Steven Spielberg is remaking this movie, but I love this movie. It's a Best Picture winner. What We Do in the Shadows from Taika Waititi. Hilarious vampire mockumentary comedy. When Harry Met Sally, Mara and I rewatched this recently. This holds up. This is one of the best romantic comedies ever made, from Nora Ephron, Billy Crystal, Meg Ryan. I love this movie. I think it's great. Then we have Whiplash from Damien Chazelle from La La Land. He did La La Land. He did First Man. He's made a lot of great movies. J.K. Simmons is great in this film. Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which was just a movie club selection just this past week, this past month. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Gene Wilder. One of the best performances of his career. Then we have Winchester. Why do I have Winchester? It's not a good movie, but I did a tour of the Winchester house when I was working over at Screen Junkies. You can find it over on Fandom Entertainment, and they had these laying around. So this is just kind of a reminder of a fun trip that Mara and I got to take, touring the ghost house, the house that is in this movie. Wind River. This is a great movie. Jeremy Renner and Elizabeth Olsen. It's about kind of the underreporting of crime on Native American reservations. A great drama, really, 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 I think it did pretty well when it came out, but if you haven't seen Wind River, I recommend that. Then we have The Wizard. Now, The Wizard is particularly a landmark for me because it introduced Super Mario Brothers 3 and featured game footage. It's essentially it's a commercial for Nintendo, but I like it. The 4K edition of The Wizard of Oz. I have not watched this yet. I'm very excited to watch it because this is again one of the most influential landmark movies ever made, and I'm excited to see this in 4K. Then The Wolf of Wall Street with Leonardo DiCaprio, Martin Scorsese directing. I think maybe my favorite. I'm trying to remember. Maybe my favorite movie of that year. Wonder Woman on 4K. I really like this movie. I think this and Shazam right now are the only two from the DC Extended Universe, the DCEU or whatever you want to call it, that we own here. Then World War Z with Brad Pitt. Movie could have been a disaster, but wasn't. The end of the Cornetto trilogy, The World's End from Edgar Wright. There's still a project that I'm going to work on about The World's End. I really like this movie for a lot of different reasons. Then we get into the X-Men films. So we have the first X-Men film. We have X2, X-Men United. We have X-Men The Last Stand, one of the greater turds in the comic book genre. X-Men First Class, which was kind of a rebound. X-Men Days of Future Past, which continued that rebound. X-Men Apocalypse, which just started swirling the drain again. Then we've got the Rogue cut of Days of Future Past. And this is another one, if you don't know, if you watch the theatrical cut of Days of Future Past, but then this is a very interesting alternate version of the movie that I think would be worth it. So those are the X-Men films. I do not own X-Men Dark Phoenix because even as a completionist, I have a hard time justifying it. I mentioned Blazing Saddles was made the same year as another great comedy. This is that comedy, Young Frankenstein. Mel Brooks made Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, two of the best comedies ever made in the same year. This is a phenomenal comedy. Then we have Zero Dark 30, also from Catherine Bigelow, follow-up to The Hurt Locker, which was a Best Picture winner. This was a Best Picture nominee about the hunt for Osama bin Laden. Then we have Zombieland, which is a fun zombie comedy. And then Ben Stiller's Zoolander, which should have done better, but didn't do better. But I think now it's found its audience, which is great because it's a funny movie. So that does it for the individual movies, but there are a couple of other things to fill out my movie collection. The first is a couple of different boxes. This one is the James Bond 50 box set that came out to celebrate the 50th anniversary of James Bond. Essentially comes in two different books, and then each book, you have different discs. So these are obviously early Roger Moore, Diamonds Are Forever, I think. So this is late Sean Connery, early Roger Moore, Diamonds Are Forever, and Live and Let Die. And then this goes all the way to, it's funny, they actually had a place for Skyfall in the book, 2012. So this was actually empty. And then you would buy Skyfall and just put it into the book after it came out, because this box set predated Skyfall coming out on home media or physical media. So this is all the James Bond movies up through Skyfall, and then of course, as I mentioned, I have Spectre, and then this was a set for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that was released. That's really cool. It's the 4K disc, but it's also got a record, the Rick Dalton single from Hullabaloo, and it's got Mad magazines, and it's just a fun little collector's edition set for the film, which I actually really, really like. I think it's a really good movie. I think that Quentin Tarantino is really hitting his stride. So there are a few movies that I still have on DVD that have not been available, either haven't been made available on Blu-ray or I haven't upgraded yet. But generally, if it's available on Blu-ray, I have tried to upgrade. So a few DVDs that I have, these aren't movies, but these are two of Kevin Smith's lectures DVDs, An Evening with Kevin Smith and An Evening with Kevin Smith 2, Evening Harder. I watch these a lot. I have no chill when it comes to Kevin Smith. I just think he's a good dude. He's a nice guy. And I loved watching him do his lectures and stuff. They're hilarious stories. This is where the Superman Return story about the giant spider comes from this disc. This is a movie called Confidence that I don't believe. I look a lot. I look all of these up and try to see if they are released on disc on high definition formats, and they have not yet been. This is a heist movie. Who directed this movie? It's actually directed by James Foley, who directed Glengarry Glen Ross. It stars Andy Garcia, Dustin Hoffman, Rachel Weisz is in this movie. Let's see, who else? Ed Burns. This is a fun little kind of con man heist caper film that not a lot of people have seen. I have on Blu-ray, but has not been put out, to my knowledge, on a high-definition medium, so there's confidence. This is a movie called The Contender, starring Joan Allen. She is really, really good in this movie. Gary Oldman is a really slimy senator in this movie. Jeff Bridges in this movie. Christian Slater. It's about she is a nominee to be the vice president, and her name is run through the mud. It's a great political kind of thriller film that I think somebody actually sent this to me because I mentioned that you can't find this anywhere in HD format. Then there is Dogma, the only Kevin Smith movie to my knowledge that's not available in HD because I think it's caught up in rights issues as far as who's going to release it, because it was a Miramax film, and obviously everything with that is weird, Disney, etc. So I still have my special edition DVD of Dogma. I think there was a Blu-ray disc at one point, but it's out of print now, and it's ridiculously expensive. This is a DVD that was put out by the website Everything is Terrible. It did sort of mashups of weird stuff called Everything is Terrible, the movie. I'm surprised that this one has not been made available in HD. This is, again, another Michael Moore documentary, Fahrenheit 9/11, which was massively culturally influential. This was the Best Picture winner at the Cannes Film Festival the year that it came out. It was the election year in 2004. And again, I understand the criticisms for his style in this movie and perhaps for some of the tactics and the way that he chose to tell his story. He's much more of a lecturist than I would say a documentarian. But I'm surprised that just because of the cultural significance that this has not been made available in a next level HD format. The same with this one. Man on the Moon, maybe the best performance of Jim Carrey's career. He plays Andy Kaufman. This is a really, really good movie and not available on Blu-ray. This is the thing when you have formats, when you have things that get upgraded from format to format. Really good movies like this a lot of times get lost in the shuffle. So Man on the Moon is a movie that I'm still hanging on to my DVD to. Let's see. This one is Meteor Man, starring Robert Townsend. This was a superhero movie that Robert Townsend wrote and directed. One of the first, if not the first, black superheroes on screen. An all-star cast. In this film, it's about a guy that gets hit by a meteor and he becomes a superhero. It's pretty simple, but I watched this a lot when I was a kid. I haven't seen a Blu-ray of it. I don't know if one's come out, but I was happy to find the DVD of it because that was one that I watched a lot. This is a compilation of the works of Michel Gondry. So if you like particularly Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, he's also was a brilliant music video director. So these are short films, music videos, etc. His earlier works. They put out a few of these. I'm trying to see, who was it that's director's label. They put out some of these. I have another one coming up of just the compiled works of some of these directors. It's great to see a lot of these works because this is some brilliant pieces of filmmaking from Michel Gondry here. This was a comedy, Orange County. It was directed by Jake Kasdan, who has gone on to do a lot of other work with Disney and others, with Jack Black and Colin Hanks. That I think is a really fun comedy. There's a lot of famous faces that pop up, Harold Ramis and others. But I like this movie, not available in an HD format. This is the Pianist, directed by Roman Polanski, obviously a name that generates a lot of controversy. He would win Best Director for this film. Adrian Brody won Best Actor for this film. And also Best Screenplay. This is still a very powerful film, and one that I'm surprised has not been picked up for an HD format that I can find. The Pianist. We have Private Parts, the Howard Stern biopic. Listen, I don't listen to Howard Stern so much anymore, but there was a time where I listened to Howard Stern for hours every day, particularly when I first moved out here and was driving a lot. This movie was a box office hit when it came out, has not been upgraded to a high definition format. This one actually, it's one of those weird things. This is The Rescuers and The Rescuers Down Under. This actually does have a Blu-ray inside, but it also includes the DVD, and it's the same size as a DVD. So if you put it with your other Blu-rays, it just sticks out. So this is actually a high definition format version of The Rescuers and The Rescuers Down Under. It's just that it is in the DVD format, so as well, and the size of a DVD. So this is a movie that I plug a lot. Shattered Glass. Hayden Christensen gets a lot of flack for being not great in the prequels. He is brilliant in this movie, as is Peter Sarsgaard. Chloe Sevigny is also great in this movie. It's about Stephen Glass, who was a journalist who was essentially accused of making up most of the stories that he worked on. This is a really, I told you I like journalism movies. This is a great journalism movie. Currently, still, I think, only available for home media on SD formats on DVD. This is not a great movie, but an interesting movie. I like The Shining more than any other Stephen King book, and this is the TV adaptation of The Shining starring Steven Weber that was on in, I think, like 1996 or 1997. It's interesting because it's a very faithful adaptation of the book, but it's not a very great... The limitations show it's a TV movie. They have to take the edge off, but I think it's interesting if you're a fan of The Shining to see really the full adaptation. Stephen King gave his blessing to this version, which he did not do for the Kubrick version, as far as he was not a big fan of it. This was a 3-night miniseries. It's interesting. It's an interesting look at The Shining. This is another one of those director's label ones like Michel Gondry. This one collecting the music video work of Spike Jonze. A lot of stuff with the Beastie Boys. Obviously, again, music videos, documentaries, stuff like this. Spike Jonze. So many great things featured in this that I have not seen on Blu-ray, and I just love these compilations because it's a lot of great short films and stuff like that. Here's one. It's on streaming services in HD, but it has not been released for home media on HD. True Lies. One of the few James Cameron movies is not available on Blu-ray or any high-definition physical media. It has been remastered for, I think it's on HBO Max right now, but it is not available to buy for home media on HD. So I still have this old-ass standard definition Blu-ray. True Lies. Last but not least, again, a movie I think that is on HD on streaming services, but not for physical media. What About Bob, starring Bill Murray and Richard Dreyfuss, directed by Frank Oz. Richard Dreyfuss, directed by Frank Oz. This is a really funny movie. This is the poster art that I like too. This was the poster, which is great. I just love this art. This is one of Bill Murray's underrated comedic performances, and I would love to have a high definition version of this movie. Roger Siskel and Ebert give it thumbs up. That's how much people loved it. But yeah, What About Bob? Super fun. So that's it. That's my movie collection. Thank you for watching all this way. I don't know why you did, but I'm happy that you did. This has been a long ride, and so I hope that you enjoyed it. If you watched this whole thing, let me know. I don't know. I don't even know if I would watch this whole thing. But thank you. I hope maybe you found some movies that you either wanted to revisit, or maybe some movies that you haven't seen. Let me know if you found any that you enjoyed. My movie collection is always growing. I'm always looking for a way to build it out, and I have a lot of people have moved away from physical media. They may stop making it sometime in the near future, but I enjoy having it. It's like curating a library. It's, yes, you can build something on a Kindle or you can put something on an e-reader, but some people just like a bookshelf. This is my bookshelf, not a space bookshelf, but like a movie bookshelf. And I just love being able to browse and see all of these different films. So thank you for watching. Please be sure to like, share if you find the other movie lover in your life that likes 2 hours of someone talking about their movies. Share it with them. Subscribe here to the channel. If you want to check out even more stuff, you can check me out over on patreon.com/Dan Murrell. We talk about all kinds of stuff. As I mentioned, there's a monthly movie club going on right now. We're talking about movies that grew on me, that I liked better on second viewing. The three that I picked were The Big Lebowski, Get Out, and Starship Troopers. So I'm going to be talking about those later this month, as well as a feature-length commentary and lots of other stuff. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.